Iran is at the edge of the cliff as the protests are intensifying and the streets are going up in flames. The regime's violence is also increasing and residents are cut off from the world. More than 2 weeks have passed since the protests began in Iran and they continue to spread. The last 24 hours were one of the peaks of the violent repression as the numbers of the unalived only kept rising. Iran has turned to militias in Iraq for assistance, with pro-Iranian terrorist organizations in the country setting up recruitment offices with the goal of helping the Ayatollah regime. Now, the eyes of the entire world are on the United States president, wondering whether he will indeed respond to the targeting of the protesters by the Ayatollah regime and deliver the winning blow to Iran. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host, Yair Pinto, bringing you the full truth about what's happening in Israel, and now we will also bring you the truth about what's happening in Iran. I also have a message for the Iranian people. We are praying for you every single day, and they need your prayers because the Ayatollah regime and the Revolutionary Guards continue to try to suppress the protests by force, while in Baba Isfahan, they set fire to the Revolutionary Guards Center as giant statues of former IRGC commander Qasem Soleimani were toppled across the country. The exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, who is perceived as the leader of the protest, called on President Trump to carry out his threats and act immediately against the regime, saying that negotiations will not bring peace. This is a reference to reports that the White House is considering an Iranian proposal for negotiations on the nuclear issue, while Trump is threatening a military strike and imposing economic sanctions under which any country that trades with Iran will suffer a 25% increase in tariffs. The internet is still blocked in Iran, so we don't know exactly what's going on, but we can be sure that thousands of lives have already been lost. However, the revolt against the regime is strengthening and escalating day by day. But we must remember that this is a scenario that the Revolutionary Guards prepared for, and they know exactly what to do to suppress it. To bring real change, the protests will need to hope for one move that could succeed in cracking Khamenei's pyramid of power. So stay with us for all the details. And meanwhile, Israel's intelligence echelon has concluded that Hamas has no intention of disarming, and there is a new plan on the table to conquer Gaza, this time without restrictions. Phase B of President Trump's ceasefire plan includes administration by a peace council and a technocratic government. But the plan to form an international stabilization force is stuck, and so Israeli officials are already preparing a broad military move. We will bring you all the details soon. In the northern arena, the IDF hit Hezbollah hard this week, as the internationally recognized government of Lebanon received a clear warning through intermediaries that the IDF has prepared a plan if Hezbollah intervenes in the war against Iran. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground reporting to you all the truth about what's happening in Israel on day 830 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are taking their orders from Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil that has been falling apart ever since the 12-day war in June, and now it might be coming close to its end. A moment before we start, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. A good place to start to call for attention to the facts is that the pro-Palestinian protesters are not chanting for the freedom of the Iranian people. Instead, the radical left in Europe and the Islamic movements that penetrated the West are changing the public order, spreading fake news, anti-Semitic propaganda, and anti-Judeo-Christian values. But we are here to bring the truth. So, share our content with as many people as possible, because this is the only way that we can succeed in making an effort to change the situation so that people will know what's happening and then how to pray for the peace. Last night was not just another night of protests in Iran. It was a night of civil uprising against the regime trying to shut off the light, literally. For more than 100 hours, the country has been almost completely disconnected from the internet. Nevertheless, in the streets, citizens are coming out to fight for their freedom against the repression mechanisms that is increasing its firepower. But what is happening right now inside Iran is not only an internal story of the people against a tyrannic regime, it is also a regional test point for the Middle East. If the regime is destabilized, it will have consequences far beyond Iran's borders. But if the regime feels it is losing control, it might try to divert attention by igniting other arenas, including the terror war against Israel. Our biggest problem right now is the fog of information. The regime cut access to the internet to make it harder for the citizens to organize and mainly to prevent the world from seeing in real time how the regime is using massive violence against the protesters. But still, even under this blackout, data is accumulating that paints a harsh picture. As according to the human rights organizations outside Iran, at least 648 citizens have lost their lives since the start of the uprising on December 28, while 10,600 have been arrested. Those are confirmed numbers, but there are rumors that the actual numbers are much higher. So amidst this attempt at the information blackout, what is actually coming out? Just isolated documentation, but it's enough to understand what's happening on the ground. Testimonies speak of live fire, of streets turning into war zones, and people being evacuated at a very high pace. This resembles a national emergency, and localized confrontations are taking place in multiple cities all across Iran. There have been police vehicles and stations lit on fire, together with tax offices and other government buildings. These are signs of an ongoing event, not a momentary outburst. As the days pass, the regime has responded like it's fighting for survival, activating reserve police and security forces and trying to close every communication route. One attempt was made to block the access to the satellite internet as well, including damaging the ability to connect to Elon Musk's Starlink satellite network, which until today was considered a lifeline in countries under censorship. There are also reports of collecting satellite dishes from homes in Tehran and of door-to-door sweeps to delete documentation from private security cameras. Apparently, the regime is not satisfied with physical repression, but also wants to erase evidence so they can spin a different narrative. The Iranian foreign minister claims that the protests got out of control because of foreign interference and speaks of infiltration by armed elements and terror attacks. He even presented his own data to justify the repression, saying that 53 mosques were set on fire, 180 ambulances were hit, and so on, framing these events as an internal war that allows the use of extreme violence to push back. This is a familiar pattern in totalitarian regimes, where first they claim legitimacy by saying that they're acting on behalf of the people, but then they treat the people like a threat and then use violence against the people to protect the people from traitors and outside threats. But there's a new twist on this old formula now, because the regime has also turned to pro-Iranian elements outside its borders to help in repression. This includes the Shiite militias in Iraq and elements identified with Hezbollah, a terrorist organization. At the same time, there were also reports of talks with senior Houthi officials in Yemen to build regional response scenarios, meaning the regime is not only repressing from within, it is trying to build a power envelope from the outside to deter, to threaten, and if necessary, also to escalate. In the international arena, we see another thing. Everyone talks about concern, but very little truly moves. Countries in Europe condemn the violence and call to restore internet and release detainees, and even take symbolic steps such as restrictions on the entry of Iranian diplomats to certain institutions. But in the streets of the world, the silence is jarring compared to the noise that was made during protests against Israel during this war against Hamas, a terrorist organization in Gaza. When it was protests for Palestinians, the streets of major cities were filled, but now, when it is an entire people fighting to free itself from a dark, theocratic regime that represses everyone and executes thousands of people just in 2025, public support is much weaker. It seems they protest only against the actions of democratic countries. This is not only hypocrisy, it is also fear, because supporting a real revolution against Tehran undermines comfortable narratives that the Western left has talked about to believe for many, many years now. But let's turn to the main thing, the United States of America. On one hand, the messages coming from Washington include a clear warning, as the president was presented with various options, including classic airstrikes against the nuclear program and the ballistic missile program, cyber operations, disruption of the regime's command and communication systems, and also targeted strikes against internal security targets. This is the toolbox meant to damage the regime's control, not only its infrastructure. On the other hand, behind the scenes, a diplomatic channel is also being maintained, as the Iranian foreign minister is in contact with the White House, its envoy, Steve Witkoff. The regime says, "We are ready for dialogue," but in the same sentence they say, "We are ready for war," and add a clear threat. If there is military action against Iran, American bases in the region and Israel could become targets. Also, to make a brief comment of my own, Iran and the United States have been negotiating about a nuclear program and many other issues for a very long time. And nothing ever came out of these talks, because the Iranians didn't want anything to come of them. They simply used negotiations as a stalling tactic to keep American pressure at bay while they continue doing whatever they want to do. That is all that they want from these negotiations. They want to postpone the response. And I hope that President Trump is smart enough not to give them what they want and what they need now. And speaking of which, President Trump has already increased economic pressure, announcing a 25% tariff on any country that does business with Iran. This is a message meant to dry up the regime's economic oxygen to a third party and give the world a clear choice. Either you are with Washington or you are helping Tehran and paying the price. At the same time, the United States has also warned its citizens to leave Iran immediately, with exit instructions overland through Turkey or Armenia, and a sharp clarification about the risk of questioning, arrest, and imprisonment. This is not a regular travel warning that they usually use. This is the wording of "we are preparing for a scenario where the situation deteriorates very fast." And where is Israel in all of this? Exactly where it must be: quiet, alert, and protected. Ongoing situation assessments are taking place in Israel, and the message to the public is not to be swept with rumors, but to be aware that the IDF is on a high alert for a surprise scenario. The operational meaning is simple. When a regime enters internal panic, one of its tactics is to divert attention outward to an external enemy in order to silence the streets. And therefore, Israel has entered a full defensive array, with wide deployment of defense systems, aerial readiness, and maintaining functional continuity if there are launch attempts or terror actions throughout proxies. And so today, we stand in front of a dangerous equation, as the harder the citizens of Iran press in the streets, the more the regime reacts violently and shuts the internet, while in parallel, it sends one hand to diplomacy to try and keep Washington happy, while also threatening Israel and American bases in the Middle East. Everyone agrees that there are sure to be more signs of uprising, but the question is, what will happen at the moment of decision? Will Washington go for a move that brings down the regime's control mechanisms, or will the Iranians succeed in buying time through negotiations to survive another round? If the regime feels it's losing control domestically, will it choose to ignite the region from the outside to try and save itself? Because the Iranian regime has lost all legitimacy in the eyes of its own people, and it's even lost legitimacy in the eyes of much of the rest of the world. And just to add something personal, I'm praying for the people of Iran. I'm praying for them to have better leadership, to have a future of peace, potentially to have peace with Israel and Iran. We had it before, we can have it once more. So here at TBN Israel, we've made our choice. We are standing with the Iranian people, and we will keep reporting everything that's happening in that country and in this region, boots on the ground style, so that you'll know how to pray for the situation. And speaking of boots on the ground, I want to talk to you for just a moment about our partner for today's video. One for Israel. Because a spiritual battle is taking place, and today nearly 99% of Israelis do not know Yeshua, Jesus in Hebrew. However, a miracle is unfolding. One for Israel ministry is sharing the gospel, and Jewish people are accepting Jesus, Yeshua, as their Messiah in numbers not seen since the early church. Many Arabs are also finding faith and unity. One for Israel is an initiative of native-born Israelis, good personal friends of us, sharing the gospel, discipling believers in Israel, and equipping spiritual leaders all across the land. As Romans 10 verse 1 expresses, "My heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they be saved." Your support helps bring the gospel back to Israel. So call 800-879-5530. Again, that's 800-879-5530 to help share the gospel in Israel. Visit oneforisrael.org/pray or scan the QR code. Thank you. Now, we are switching our focus to the Gaza Strip, as just hundreds of meters from IDF positions, Hamas is quietly going back to work, producing rockets, operating underground, and testing the boundaries again. In the last 24 hours, unusual attempts to approach IDF positions were identified, and these are not localized incidents, but a directional sign. Hamas is not willing to disarm, and if it does not disarm, the security establishment is preparing for the IDF to move to a broad operation to break control and turn this armament into a fact on the ground, not a clause on paper. On the ground, Hamas operates methodically, sending Gazans toward IDF positions every single day to collect intelligence and learn the routine of the forces. The army assesses that this is part of preparations for raids on positions and short-range attacks. The message Hamas is trying to send is that it is still capable of hurting the IDF, even while avoiding a frontal confrontation. And above all, Hamas still has kilometers of tunnels underneath the Gaza Strip that have not yet been located. Also on the Israeli side of the Yellow Line, from which the IDF is supposed to withdraw as part of Phase B of the deal. The IDF says it will take years to locate and destroy all the tunnels on our side, therefore they operate around the clock to find and demolish them before any change in the deployment turns every opening into an operational threat. And behind the scenes, Hamas has returned to producing rockets and has accumulated diverse smuggling methods. The IDF suspects it also uses drones for smuggling from Sinai and inside Israel through sophisticated bypasses. Also, around 800 trucks are entering Gaza every single day, loaded with humanitarian aid, and Hamas continues to steal much of it. This is related to the diplomatic issues, because in the security establishment, they assess that Egypt is speaking into two voices around opening the Rafah border crossing, publicly demanding opening, but in practice, not rushing. Israel conditions opening the crossing on the return of the remains of the last fallen hostage, Ran Guyali, assessing that Hamas can find him if it wants to, but that has not happened so far. On the other hand, according to assessments in Jerusalem, Egypt has a deep layer of interest because President El-Sisi is aware of the threat from within, from the Muslim Brotherhood, and Hamas is perceived as part of that same ideology space. So, an open crossing with large movement volumes and unavoidable inspection gaps can change the rules of the game. Into this tension enters the Phase B plan being formed in Washington. President Trump is expected to present details soon regarding the principles of the next stage, including the establishment of a peace council and presenting a technocratic government for civilian management of the Gaza Strip, and designated chairman Nikolai Maldenov, who has already been in Israel and met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But in Jerusalem, they say sharply, without dealing with the question of control and weapons, no civilian mechanism will hold. And the third component is supposed to be a temporary international stabilization force, but in Israel, they assess it is almost stuck from the start. Countries that expressed early willingness withdrew when they understood the meaning could be military friction with Hamas terrorists. Therefore, in Israel, they outline a timetable. After a peace council and technocrats, Hamas is supposed to receive a deadline to disarm, about 2 months. But the scenario being built in Jerusalem is not disarmament by agreement, but the expiration of the deadline and then a move to a broad military operation. An updated plan for a new operation is already on the table of the political echelon, including conquering all of Gaza's territory outside of the Yellow Line, not a localized actions and not time limited, but a movement to change control and enable disarmament in practice. To sum up, on the ground Hamas is rebuilding capability, while America and Israel are trying to build a day after that does not collapse immediately. And if Hamas does not disarm on time, the countdown will begin and will end with one decision: to move from friction operations to a decisive move of control by Israel in Gaza. If this happens, we will be on the front line with the soldiers in order to bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel. Now we're shifting our focus to the northern arena. In the last 24 hours, a clear political security message was delivered to Lebanon's internationally recognized government. If Hezbollah tries to exploit the tension around Iran in order to intervene and open fire towards Israel, the IDF is ready to take Hezbollah down. To understand why this message is coming out now, you only need to look at what is happening on the ground. Hezbollah has not disappeared or disarmed. On the contrary, it continues to strengthen even after 2 years in which Israel hit it again and again. In Lebanon, there's talk about disarmament and stages. In practice, the organization still holds weapons, still rebuilds, and still tries to raise its head exactly at the moment when the entire region is intense all around Iran and the entire axis of evil is looking for where to ignite the fires. In recent days in Lebanon, they talked about finishing a first stage in dismantling Hezbollah weapons south of the Litani River and moving to the next stage further north. But in Israel, they look at the result on the ground, not at headlines. Money continues to move, equipment continues to arrive, manpower is recruited again, and Hezbollah's attempts to flex muscles returns, even if it's currently avoiding full escalations. From Israel's perspective, this is exactly the danger: an organization under pressure, wounded, but with an appetite to rebuild deterrence, is looking for a moment when attention shifts to another arena. And this brings us to the operational action that Israel carried out right now to make clear there is no containment here. In a short and fast wave of strikes, this past week, 7 targets were struck, using about 30 munitions in a very short period of time. This is not a hit to check the box. It is a model of operation that includes fast, precise action with a message. Israel knows how to react, knows how to close loops, and knows how to do it at a pace that shrinks Hezbollah's window of time to respond, disperse, and hide. Here it is important to understand the Israeli logic. On the one hand, Israel preserves capabilities and stockpiles in case the Iranian arena ignites, or someone tries to expand the confrontation to different fronts. On the other hand, it does not allow Hezbollah to exploit this waiting time to quietly rebuild. Therefore, instead of one big blow, we are seeing a method that includes surgical strikes, pinpoint eliminations when needed, damage to weapons depots and infrastructure, and a constant message that the skies do not belong to Hezbollah. On the Lebanese side, they understand this too. Lebanon's president Joseph Aoun spoke in recent days about the state being responsible for security and weapons, and that there is no place for armed groups operating outside the state framework. He does not need to name names for everyone to understand who is meant. But between the statement and execution, there is a whole gap, especially when Hezbollah is not only a militia, but a political military mechanism that holds a deep grip in the state of Lebanon. And Israel's current message connects exactly to that gap. Israel is telling Lebanon that the responsibility is on you. If Hezbollah chooses to go wild because of Iran, all of Lebanon will pay a heavy price, not only Hezbollah. This is a key point, because in the next confrontation, Israel will not settle for restoring deterrence against cells or warehouses. It is signaling there is already a broad plan ready for the moment Hezbollah thinks it can create a new equation. The question is, what will happen first? Will Lebanon truly succeed in imposing real disarmament, or will Hezbollah try again to drag the entire state into a confrontation to save its status while the Iranian arena is shaking. And while the ground in the north heats up and the air over Lebanon remains on alert, there is one more front that is quiet only on the surface: the sea. Is Israel already building its next move precisely from there? So what is the future of the Israeli Navy in the next confrontations? We'll tell you in a moment, but first, I want to invite you to leave a comment and let us know what else you'd like us to report on here on Boots on the Ground on our TBN Israel channel. While you're at it, press the like button, leave a comment, share this video, and make sure to subscribe to TBN Israel so you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Now, I served in a tank unit in the IDF and was never a sailor, but I've always appreciated the importance of the sea. Right now, it's quiet at sea off Israel's coast, but that quiet is misleading. Under the radar of the headlines, the IDF is marking the next dimension, and the Navy is becoming a complementary strategic arm of the Air Force, the one that holds continuity, depth, and presence, even when all arenas are burning. As part of the new multi-layer plan through 2030, the Navy is supposed to receive more responsibilities, more capabilities, and more smart tools. The emphasis is not only on ships and missiles, but on integrating robotics, autonomy, and AI capabilities that accelerate detection, closing loops, and real-time response. At the same time, the IDF is investing in manpower, conscripts, career, and reservists, so that technology will work and that the people will remain strong, skilled, and alert. Because in the next confrontation, whoever controls the sea will also make the decision in the air and on land. There's one more story I need to tell you about what's happening in Israel this week, and that is a massive winter storm which began on Monday evening and is bringing enormous amounts of rain as well as high winds to many parts of the country. We're feeling it here also in Jerusalem, but some lower layer areas have been filled with floodings, and many people also have been hurt by this stormy weather. So please be in prayer for all the people of Israel that are not used to this kind of storm, that are affected by the situation. Remember to pray for all the innocent lives that are affected by what's happening in Iran. Let's unite in prayer for the Iranian people. We love the Iranian people and want them to have a better future. Let's pray for all the IDF soldiers that are guarding us despite this weather in multiple places. Let's pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.